The grand space arena was alive with sound and color. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the seats, their voices blending into a thunderous echo that shook the walls. Flags of many alien clans waved in the air, and glowing lights circled the arena floor. This was not a fight of swords or weapons but a contest of skill and mind, and the crowd came to witness greatness. At the center of the arena stood Princess Myra of the Veyron Empire. She was tall, graceful, and carried herself with pride. Her silver eyes scanned the crowd with confidence, and every movement she made spoke of royalty. Myra was famous across the stars for never losing a challenge. She had won battles of combat, contests of strategy, and trials of endurance. Many admired her, but many also feared her arrogance. She believed no one could stand against her, and until this day, no one had. On the other side of the arena stood Aaron, a human from Earth. His appearance seemed ordinary compared to the glowing scales and armored skin of other alien challengers. He wore simple clothes, and his dark eyes held no sign of fear. Aaron was not a warrior, nor was he part of royalty. He looked calm, almost quiet, as if the cheers and laughter around him could not reach his mind. The announcer's voice rang through the arena. Today we witness the contest between Princess Myra of the Veyron Empire and Aaron of Earth. The rules are clear. Both will enter the maze of trials. The first to reach the crystal heart at its center shall be named the victor. The one who fails shall accept the punishment declared by the council. The crowd cheered again. Some shouted Myra's name, certain of her victory. Others laughed at the human, wondering why he even dared to compete. Myra lifted her chin high, her lips forming a confident smile. "You should have stayed on your small planet," she told Aaron. "This game is far beyond your kind." Aaron did not answer with anger. He simply nodded and replied, "We will see." The gates of the maze opened. A tall structure of shifting walls and glowing paths stood before them. The maze of trials was alive, changing every moment with traps, puzzles, and illusions. It was not only about speed but also about patience and clear thinking. Many before had entered, but only the clever and cautious ever reached the heart. Myra stepped forward first, her long strides filled with pride. She moved quickly, certain her sharp senses would guide her. Aaron followed, his pace steady, his eyes studying every wall and corner. Where Myra relied on speed and instinct, Aaron relied on patience and careful thought. Inside the maze, the noise of the crowd faded into silence. Strange lights glowed on the walls, and the floor shifted beneath their feet. Myra moved left, chasing the bright path, but a sudden trap closed behind her, forcing her forward. Aaron paused, studying the light before him. He noticed how the brighter paths led to danger while the dimmer paths led to safety. Quietly, he chose the path that seemed less obvious. Minutes turned into long stretches of time. Myra grew frustrated as walls blocked her and hidden traps slowed her progress. She cursed under her breath but pushed harder, believing her strength would break through any obstacle. Aaron, on the other hand, stopped often to think. He pressed symbols on the wall, waited for patterns to reveal themselves, and then moved with quiet certainty. At one point, Myra found herself standing before a deep pit. She leapt across with ease, landing with pride on the other side. But as she moved forward, the floor gave way, and she barely caught the edge before pulling herself back up. Aaron reached the same pit later. He studied the walls and found a hidden switch. A bridge extended across the gap, and he crossed without danger. The deeper they went, the more the maze shifted. Illusions appeared, showing false paths. Myra chased them, only to find herself going in circles. Aaron closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the maze. He trusted his sense rather than his sight, and the illusions faded from his mind. Step by step, he moved closer to the center. Finally, the crystal heart glowed ahead. A giant gem pulsed with light, its shine reflecting across the walls. Myra rushed toward it, but another wall rose before her, sealing her path. She struck it with her fists, shouting in anger, but it would not break. Aaron came from the other side, calm and steady, and reached the crystal first. His hand touched the glowing surface, and the maze froze. The walls sank into the ground, and the crowd's roar filled the air again. Aaron stood at the center, his hand on the crystal, while Myra stood trapped behind a wall that slowly disappeared. The announcer's voice echoed across the arena. The victor is Aaron of Earth. For the first time, Princess Myra has lost a bet. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Some cheered the human's victory, while others shouted in shock. Myra's face burned with humiliation. She had never imagined losing, especially to a human. Her pride shook as the council stood to declare her punishment. And in that moment, the story of a forced union began, though neither of them could yet see how it would change the future of two worlds. The arena was silent for a brief moment, as if the entire crowd could not believe what they had seen. A human, plain in appearance and without royal power, had touched the crystal before the proud Princess Myra. The silence broke quickly into shouts, cheers, and gasps of surprise. Some aliens banged their hands on the railing, demanding the contest be repeated. Others laughed and celebrated, shouting Aaron's name as if he had risen from nowhere to become a legend. Myra stood frozen. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her silver eyes locked on the glowing crystal that Aaron's hand rested upon. She had rushed, she had fought, and she had believed herself untouchable, yet victory had slipped from her grasp. She clenched her fists until her knuckles burned. Pride had carried her forward, and now that same pride crumbled before the thousands of watching eyes. The announcer's voice rang out again. The contest is finished. Aaron of Earth is the victor. Princess Myra of the Varen Empire has lost. The council stood from their high seats. They were a group of wise elders who enforced the laws of the empire. One of them, an old figure with golden skin and long ridges across his head, spoke in a deep, commanding voice. By the ancient law of wagers, punishment must be given. Princess Myra, you agreed that the outcome would be honored before this crowd. You cannot turn away from the result. Myra lifted her chin and tried to keep her voice steady. I do not deny the rule. I have lost. The words cut her pride like a blade. Never before had she spoken such a sentence. The crowd listened, waiting for the punishment to be revealed. Another elder, whose voice carried sharpness like a knife, declared, Then hear the judgment. The princess shall be bound in union to the victor. By our law, she must take Aaron of Earth as her husband. A wave of shock spread through the arena. Voices rose at once, some in laughter, some in disbelief, and some in protest. The idea of a human marrying the royal princess sounded impossible. Myra's face turned pale, then burned red with fury. She had expected punishment, but never this. This is an insult, she said firmly. I am heir to the Varen throne. You would tie me to a simple human. The elder's voice grew heavier. The law is clear. The punishment of the wager must be binding. Your pride has brought you here, princess. It is not the council who chose this path but yourself when you made the bet. Aaron stood quietly during the exchange. He had not smiled at his victory, nor had he spoken against the punishment. When the crowd turned to look at him, he simply bowed his head slightly, showing respect to the council and the princess. He had not entered the contest for marriage or power. He had only wished to test himself, yet now the weight of a royal bond rested on his shoulders. Myra's heart burned with anger, but there was no escape. The law was older than her, older than the council itself. To deny it would bring dishonor not only to her but to her entire empire. She stood tall, though her voice carried ice. Then it shall be done. I will not break the law, though I find no honor in this punishment. The council signaled to the guards, who stepped forward and lifted banners of unity. The ritual would not be delayed. Before the eyes of thousands, Myra and Aaron were brought together at the center of the arena. A glowing band of light appeared between them, formed by the energy of the crystal. The bond of marriage in Veyran tradition was not only words but also a symbol of shared destiny. As the band of light encircled their hands, the crowd erupted again with cheers and shouts. Myra's jaw tightened. She kept her gaze forward, refusing to look at Aaron. To her, this was shame, not honor. Aaron, however, glanced at her with calm respect. He did not mock her or boast. His voice, quiet and steady, spoke only 4 words: "I will respect you." For a moment, Myra's anger wavered, though pride quickly returned to cover it. She pulled her hand back once the bond was sealed, her steps sharp as she turned away. The crowd continued to roar, their voices carrying across the stars. Later, when the arena emptied and the lights dimmed, Myra stood alone in her chamber. The victory she had always trusted had slipped from her, and now her future was tied to a human she did not choose. She looked into the mirror, her silver eyes meeting her own reflection. "How could I lose?" she whispered. Yet in her heart, she remembered Aaron's calm gaze and his steady words. They troubled her more than the defeat itself. Across the hall, Aaron sat quietly in his new quarters. He did not celebrate, nor did he carry pride. He only thought about what lay ahead. He had entered the contest as a test, but now he carried the responsibility of a bond that could change the path of 2 worlds. The night passed in silence, but both knew that their story had only begun. The punishment of a lost bet had tied them together, and neither could yet see how deeply it would shape their destiny. The morning after the contest, the palace of the Veyran Empire stood tall and bright against the twin suns. Its towers reached high into the clouds, and its walls glowed with living light drawn from crystals deep below the planet's surface. Yet inside the palace halls, silence ruled. Servants moved carefully, their voices lowered, for the entire kingdom now whispered about the strange marriage. Princess Myra walked with her head high, but inside she carried a storm. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her royal robes shimmered with silver threads, but she took no pride in them. What once made her feel powerful now reminded her of her loss. The words of the council still echoed in her mind: "You must take Aaron of Earth as your husband." She clenched her fists, her heart burning with the shame of defeat. Aaron walked a few steps behind her. He did not wear grand robes or shining armor. His clothes were plain, the kind of garments a traveler might wear. He did not seem out of place by accident but by nature. Compared to the glowing walls and shining guards, Aaron looked simple, even fragile. Yet his steady steps showed no fear. Myra could not understand him. How could a man so plain carry himself with such calmness? She had expected him to boast, to act as if her loss was his glory, but he did not. Since the moment the bond was sealed, Aaron had spoken little. Only respect left his lips, nothing more. The royal chamber doors opened, and they entered the hall of binding. It was a wide room filled with banners of unity, glowing softly with the light of the crystal heart. The council stood there again, waiting to confirm the marriage in front of the royal court. Nobles and generals filled the sides of the hall, their eyes sharp with judgment. Some looked at Aaron with distrust, others with open disdain. A few whispered among themselves, wondering what this human could possibly bring to their empire. The elder with golden skin raised his hand. "By law, the union is sealed. Today we witness the first step of a bond between the Veyran Empire and the world of Earth. Let none deny this truth, for it was earned by the rules of the contest." The words carried power, but Myra's pride resisted them. She stood tall, her silver eyes forward, refusing to glance at Aaron. To her, this was punishment, not honor. Yet she also knew the Empire watched her closely. If she showed weakness, if she broke the bond, her people would call her dishonorable. That thought hurt more than the marriage itself. After the ceremony ended, Aaron and Myra were led to their new shared quarters. The chamber was large and decorated with fine art, glowing lanterns, and soft walls of crystal. Yet the space between them felt greater than the entire hall. Myra stood near the window, gazing out at the shining city below. Aaron sat near the low table, his hands folded. "You do not belong here," Myra said coldly, her eyes still on the city. "This world is not your place, and this marriage is not real. It is nothing but a chain placed on me by law." Aaron listened quietly. He did not answer with anger or pride. Instead, he spoke slowly, his voice calm. "I did not come here to claim power, princess. I entered the contest for myself, not for you, and not for this union. But since the law has bound us, I will respect it. I will not shame you." His words surprised her. Myra had expected demands, perhaps even arrogance, but Aaron gave none. Still, her pride would not allow her to show weakness. She turned to face him at last, her silver eyes sharp. "Respect will not change the truth. You are human, and I am royal. We come from different worlds. Do not think this bond will make you equal to me." Aaron held her gaze but without challenge. "I never asked to be equal. I only wish to walk my path with honor. What others think does not change who I am." Myra found no reply. His quiet certainty unsettled her more than anger would have. She turned away again, trying to ignore the strange unease that grew inside her. Days passed, and the whispers in the palace grew louder. Nobles mocked the marriage in private, while generals doubted Aaron's worth. Myra, proud as ever, ignored them in public, though in private she carried the weight of their judgment. Aaron, however, lived as he always had. He explored the palace, asked questions about the empire, and learned the customs with patience. He did not push himself forward, nor did he shrink back. He simply moved quietly, step by step, gaining knowledge. One evening, Myra saw him repairing a broken water channel near the palace gardens. The servants had failed to fix it, but Aaron studied the design and adjusted the flow until the water ran clear again. The servants bowed, thanking him with smiles. Myra watched from the shadows, confused. Why would a man with no rank or title choose to do such simple work? What did he gain from it? Aaron noticed her watching and bowed his head slightly, as he always did. No words of pride left his lips, only a calm respect. Myra turned away quickly, her pride telling her not to care, yet her heart whispered questions she could not silence. The forced union felt like a punishment to her, but slowly, unseen by her own eyes, it was already beginning to shape a new path. The days after the forced marriage moved slowly inside the great palace. To the people of the empire, it was still a matter of shock that their proud princess had been bound to a human. Whispers followed Myra wherever she went. Servants bowed lower than usual, not out of respect but out of fear of her anger. Nobles in the court smiled politely in her presence but mocked her behind her back. Myra's pride was strong, and she walked with her head high, refusing to let anyone see her weakness. Yet inside she was restless. She could not escape the bond that tied her to Aaron. No matter how much she told herself that it was only punishment, the truth was there each day. Aaron, however, seemed unchanged. He did not seek to use his new position for power or wealth. Instead, he lived as he always had, quiet and steady. He joined the palace workers, learning their tasks, listening to their problems, and lending a hand where he could. At first, they avoided him, treating him as an outsider, but slowly, they saw that he worked not for recognition but because he wished to help. This difference in their way of living soon became the root of tension between Myra and Aaron. One evening, the council called for Myra to attend a meeting in the Chamber of Strategy. Aaron followed, as was expected of him now. The chamber was a place of great decisions, where maps of the galaxy floated in the air, glowing with stars and borders. Generals and advisors stood waiting. The discussion was about a nearby colony planet that faced shortages of food and water. The nobles argued about how much aid should be given, each one thinking of cost and reputation rather than the lives of the colony's people. Myra spoke sharply, demanding swift action. But then, to the surprise of all, Aaron spoke. If you want the supplies to last longer, use a rotation plan. Send aid in smaller but steady amounts, and teach the colony how to grow food on their land. That way they will not depend on endless shipments. The generals frowned, and one of the nobles laughed. A human giving advice to the empire? What do you know of our ways? Aaron did not react to the insult. He answered calmly, I know what survival means. On Earth, we had to learn from mistakes. We are not stronger than you, but we adapt. We find ways to endure when resources are few. The council fell silent for a moment, unsettled by his tone. Myra's pride flared. She did not like seeing him speak among her people as if he belonged. After the meeting, she confronted him in their chamber. You had no right to speak, she said coldly. You are not of this empire. Your words carry no weight here. Aaron looked at her calmly, as he always did. Then why did they listen, even if only for a moment? Sometimes truth is not about where you come from but about what works. Myra's silver eyes narrowed. You embarrass me in front of my council. Do you think they will respect me more if my husband speaks like a teacher? Aaron shook his head. I did not speak to take your place. I spoke because lives depend on choices. If they find my words useful, then it is not shame but help. You do not lose honor when others share ideas. His words unsettled her. She wanted to argue, but deep down, she knew the colony would benefit from his plan. She turned away, unwilling to admit it aloud. Days passed, and more moments like this followed. Aaron suggested small changes in how workers repaired machines, in how supplies were stored, in how tasks were shared. His ideas were simple, but they often solved problems the nobles ignored. Myra watched, torn between pride and curiosity. She wanted to dismiss him, but she could not ignore the results. One afternoon, she found herself walking through the gardens with him. The air was filled with the soft glow of crystal flowers, and the sound of water running in streams. For a long time, they walked in silence. Finally, Myra spoke. You are strange, human. You have no power, no wealth, no army, yet you stand without fear. Even when they mock you, you do not break. Why? Aaron looked at the flowers for a moment before answering. Because fear changes nothing. I cannot control what others say. I can only control what I do. If I stand calm, then their words have no power over me. Myra studied him carefully. His words were simple, but they carried a strength she could not deny. In her world, power came from titles and victories. In his world, it seemed, power came from endurance and patience. Still, her pride would not let her accept him. She raised her chin. Do not think that your calmness makes you my equal. You are still bound to me only because of punishment. Aaron gave a small nod. Perhaps. But sometimes punishment leads to paths we never expect. Time will tell. Myra turned away quickly, unsettled by his quiet certainty once again. She could not admit it, but his words echoed in her mind long after. The clash between their worlds was not over. Each day tested them, each word between them was a battle of pride and patience. Yet, beneath that struggle, something was slowly beginning to change. The palace halls glowed with the calm light of crystals, but beneath their beauty, unease was growing. For weeks, the empire had heard whispers of unrest beyond its borders. Merchant ships spoke of unknown fleets gathering in the dark stretches of space. Some claimed to have seen war banners from the rival Zorith Dominion, a race known for its hunger for conquest. The council dismissed some of these reports as rumors, yet the fear among the people grew each day. Princess Myra sat in the council chamber, her silver eyes sharp as the generals argued. Maps of stars floated in the air, showing the empire's borders. Red marks flickered along the edges where attacks had been reported. They are testing us, one general said firmly. The Zorith send raiders to weaken our defenses before a greater strike. Another general shook his head. We cannot waste resources chasing shadows. If we spread too thin, we invite defeat even faster. The voices grew louder, and no agreement was reached. Myra listened, her pride heavy with the weight of her empire. She wanted to speak with strength, but the arguments of the generals pulled in opposite directions. Then Aaron, who sat quietly at the edge of the chamber, raised his voice. You are looking at the wrong places. The Zorith are not striking at random. They are testing how you react. Every raid teaches them about your strength and your weakness. The generals frowned. One of them turned sharply. And what would you know, human? You speak as though you understand war. Aaron did not flinch. His tone remained calm. I know only what history has taught us. On Earth, enemies often tested defenses before their real attack. They sent small groups to measure the reaction. If you study their pattern, you will know where the true strike will fall. The chamber grew quiet for a moment. Myra looked at him, remembering how his advice had saved the colony weeks before. She wanted to dismiss him again, to protect her pride, yet her mind told her otherwise. His words had sense, and ignoring them could bring danger. Show us, Myra said at last. Aaron rose and walked to the glowing star map. He pointed at the marks where raids had been reported. Here, here, and here, he said, moving his hand in a slow arc. They are not random. They form a path. The Zorith are pushing you to move your fleets in one direction. But their real target is here. His finger landed on a bright world near the center of the Empire's trade routes. The generals leaned closer. One muttered, if they take that world, they cut our supply lines. Myra's eyes narrowed. The truth was clear. Aaron's simple reasoning had revealed what none of the generals had noticed. Pride pricked at her heart, but she knew she could not ignore this. Prepare the defenses, she commanded. If the Zorith strike there, they will find us ready. The council dispersed to act, though many still whispered doubts about the humans' influence. Myra walked with Aaron through the long corridor afterward. Her voice was low but firm. You speak as if war is a game of puzzles. Aaron shook his head. It is not a game. It is survival. If you wish to live, you must learn the way your enemy thinks. You must step into their mind, even if it feels strange. Myra studied him. Strange words, yet useful. You do not look like a warrior, but you think like one. I do not understand it. Aaron gave a faint smile. Sometimes strength is not in the body but in the way we see the world. That night, the warning proved true. Scouts reported that a large Zorith fleet had entered the Empire's space. They moved exactly along the path Aaron had predicted, heading toward the trade world. Panic filled the court as messages arrived, each one confirming the danger. The Empire's fleets rushed into position, prepared this time. For once, they were not caught unready. Battles began at the edge of the world's skies, flashes of light filling the dark of space. The Empire's ships fought with fierce power, guided by the knowledge of where the enemy would strike. From the palace balcony, Myra stood watching the distant stars flare with battle. Her heart was heavy, but she also felt a strange fire inside. The human she had once dismissed as weak had seen what her generals had missed. Aaron joined her at the balcony. He did not speak of victory or pride. He only said, this is only the beginning. They will return stronger. You must be ready. Myra turned to face him. For the first time, her gaze softened, even if only slightly. You surprise me, Aaron of Earth. I thought you were nothing more than punishment. Yet now I see you may be something else. I do not know what, but time will tell. The night sky burned with the light of warships, and both of them knew that the clash ahead would decide more than the fate of one world. It would test their bond, their strength, and the future of the Empire itself. The night sky above the trade world burned with light as fleets clashed. Warships of the Veyran Empire held their ground against the massive force of the Zorith Dominion. Beams of energy crossed the darkness, explosions lit the void, and the sound of battle carried through the communication lines into the palace. Every strike shook the future of the empire. Princess Myra stood inside the command hall, her silver eyes fixed on the floating star map. Small glowing symbols marked ships as they moved across the battlefield. She clenched her fists, her pride pushing her to give commands, but she held back. She remembered Aaron's words, "If you wish to live, you must learn the way your enemy thinks." Aaron stood beside her, calm even as the map showed the Empire's ships taking heavy losses. The generals argued loudly, their voices full of panic. Some demanded retreat, while others called for a reckless charge. Myra's heart raced, but her voice rose clear. "Silence! We will not scatter. We will listen before we decide." All eyes turned to her. The council waited for her judgment. Myra looked at Aaron. He did not speak quickly. He studied the movements of the enemy fleet, his eyes tracing the shifting patterns. Finally, he said, "They are trying to break your center. They want your strongest ships to move away from the planet. If that happens, the Zorith will strike from behind and surround you." One general shook his head. "Impossible. They do not fight with such patience." Aaron's tone remained steady. "On Earth, we learned that patience is a weapon. The enemy will wait for your mistake. Do not give it to them. Hold your center. Let them think you are slow. When they move for the trap, close it on them." Myra studied the map. Slowly, she nodded. "We will follow this plan." The generals hesitated, but her command left no room for argument. Orders spread through the fleet. The Empire's ships tightened their formation, holding their ground with stubborn strength. The Zorith pressed harder, their waves of ships striking like claws. For a moment, it seemed the Empire would break, but then the enemy revealed its hand. From the edge of the map, hidden ships appeared, moving to strike from behind. Gasps filled the command hall. The generals turned pale. The trap Aaron had spoken of was real. "Now," Aaron said firmly. Myra's voice cut through the hall. "All fleets, close the circle. Surround them." The Empire's ships shifted at once, moving with speed that shocked the Zorith. Instead of being trapped, the Empire's forces became the trap itself. From all sides, they closed on the enemy. The sky lit with fire as the circle tightened, crushing the Zorith ships between walls of burning light. Cheers erupted in the command hall as the battle turned. Generals who had doubted Aaron now stared at the map with awe. Princess Myra felt her chest swell with pride, but for the first time, it was not pride in herself alone. It was pride shared with the man beside her. The fight raged for hours. The Empire's fleets took heavy damage, but they held firm. When the sun rose over the trade world, the Zorith fleet was broken. The survivors fled into the darkness of space, their banners of conquest torn by defeat. Victory was theirs. In the silence after the battle, Myra walked onto the balcony of the palace. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of crystal flowers from the gardens below. She looked at the horizon where the stars still glowed faintly from the fight. Aaron joined her, his steps steady as always. "You were right," Myra said softly. The words were heavy, for she had never spoken them to anyone before. Her pride resisted, but her heart demanded honesty. "Without your mind, we would have lost this world." Aaron did not smile with arrogance. He only nodded. "It was not me alone. It was your command that turned the plan into victory. Without your strength, the fleet would not have held." For a moment, they stood in silence, side by side. The bond that had once felt like chains now felt different. Myra no longer saw him only as punishment. She saw him as a partner, one who carried no royal blood, yet carried wisdom that even her generals lacked. Later, in the Great Hall, the council gathered once more. Nobles who had mocked the marriage now bowed their heads in respect. Generals who had doubted the human now praised his insight. The elder with golden skin spoke clearly. The Empire owes its survival to both Princess Myra and Aaron of Earth. Together they have shown what unity can achieve. Myra's heart swelled with a feeling she could not name. For the first time, she did not feel ashamed of her bond. Instead, she felt a strange sense of pride, not for herself alone but for the path they now shared. That night, as the palace lights dimmed and the stars shone quietly above, Myra sat in her chamber, staring at her reflection. She thought of Aaron's calm gaze, his steady voice, his refusal to be shaken even when all mocked him. She whispered softly, almost to herself, perhaps this union was not punishment at all. Perhaps it was something more. Across the hall, Aaron rested in silence, unaware of her words. Yet in his heart, he too felt a change. The battle had not only saved a world but also begun to build something stronger between them, something that could not be written in law or forced by punishment. It was trust, born slowly from fire and patience. The Empire had survived the battle, but both Myra and Aaron knew the war was not finished. The Zorith would return, stronger and fiercer. Yet for the first time, Myra felt she would not face it alone. The days after the battle passed quickly. Repairs spread across the trade world. Burned towers were rebuilt, and wounded ships floated in dry docks as crews worked without rest. The Empire had won, but everyone knew the Zorith Dominion was not finished. They would return, and their shadow still lingered across the stars. Inside the palace, however, something had changed. Princess Myra no longer walked with the cold distance she once carried. Her steps were steady, her voice calm, but her heart no longer felt chained by the marriage that had once seemed like a cruel punishment. She now carried a quiet respect for Aaron, the human who had stood beside her when even her strongest generals faltered. One evening, Myra entered the strategy chamber. She found Aaron there, studying star maps spread across the table. He did not notice her at first. His brow was set in thought, his finger tracing the paths of trade routes, searching for where the Zorith might strike next. She watched him in silence, her pride softening with each passing moment. "You never rest," Myra said finally. Aaron looked up. His face was calm, his voice plain. "The enemy will return. If we prepare now, we will not be caught by surprise." Myra stepped closer. "You fight as if this empire is your own." Aaron's eyes met hers. "It is my home now. When your council forced this bond, I thought it was nothing but chains. But I will not live here as a shadow. If I am tied to this empire, then I will fight for it as if it were my own world." The words struck Myra deeply. For so long, she had believed he hated this place, hated her, hated the punishment that bound them. Yet here he was, planning for the survival of her people as if they were his own. In that moment, Myra felt something shift inside her heart. It was not weakness, nor surrender. It was understanding. She had lost a bet and thought it had cost her freedom. But now she realized she had gained something far greater, a partner who did not bow before her crown but walked beside her with unshaken resolve. Days later, the Empire gathered for a great ceremony. The nobles, generals, and council filled the grand hall, its tall crystal pillars glowing in the light of twin suns. This was meant to honor the victory and to show unity after the battle. At the center of the hall stood Myra and Aaron, side by side. The elder with golden skin raised his voice. "The Empire has endured because of courage and unity. Princess Myra and Aaron of Earth proved that even in forced bonds, greatness can rise. Today, we recognize them not only as leaders but as a symbol of what strength truly is." The crowd bowed, their voices rising in agreement. For the first time, no mockery touched Aaron's name. No whispers of punishment or shame lingered. Instead, the hall echoed with respect. Myra felt pride swell in her chest, not only for her people but for the man at her side. Later, as the ceremony ended, Myra and Aaron walked together across the palace balcony. Stars filled the sky, endless and bright. The quiet between them was no longer heavy. It was calm, steady, alive. Myra broke the silence. When this union was forced upon me, I hated it. I thought it was a chain meant to humiliate me. But now I see it differently. You stood when no one else did. You gave me strength when my pride blinded me. This bond is no longer punishment. Aaron's voice was steady as ever. I did not wish for this either. But in time, I saw truth. You are more than a crown, Myra. You carry the weight of your people, yet you never let it crush you. You learned to listen, even when your heart resisted. That is strength I respect. Their eyes met under the starlight. No council, no general, no empire had written these words. They belonged only to them. From that night on, their path was no longer one of forced duty. It was a path of choice. Myra and Aaron stood as partners, facing a galaxy that would test them again. The Zorith Dominion still prepared for war, but the Empire would not face it divided. With wisdom from Earth and the pride of Vera joined together, they had the chance to build a future where two worlds stood as one. And so, what began as punishment grew into something unbreakable. A bond forged not by games or laws, but by fire, trust, and the stars themselves. Myra no longer saw Aaron as a burden. She saw him as her equal. Together, they were no longer princess and prisoner, nor ruler and outcast. They were partners bound not by chains, but by choice. As the stars stretched endless above them, Myra whispered quietly, almost to herself, perhaps this was not fate's cruelty. Perhaps it was fate's gift. Aaron did not answer with words. He only stood beside her, steady as always, his presence enough to tell her that whatever storm came next, they would face it together. The Empire would endure. Humanity would rise. And in the union of a princess and a human, hope for a future brighter than war was born.